All right, well, let's start by coding our first model object, which is a roadway centerline. First, I'll click on a line tool. This is a smart line in Microstation. We'll activate that. We're going to make sure that certain objects tools are deactivated. There's this tool called AccuDraw, which allows you to set the angle of your line, and we want to be able to draw as freely as possible, so that's why I turned that off. And also I'm just going to make sure that snap is disabled. We'll get into those pieces a little later, but first let's just code our first line. So we'll start here where the off-ramp diverges from the main line. I'll click my first point here, advance about, let's zoom in a bit here. Hopefully this isn't too disorienting to do it this way. What we want to do is get closer to that center line area, okay? So now we can see the center line better. So I'll click my second point here. And in choosing these points, we want to have a point about every 100 to 200 feet approximately along a straightaway. And when we go around curves or approximate elevations as a road changes in elevation, we want to be able to capture that as well. As you can see, between the first 2 points that we clicked on, that's a topo line at the beginning of the line. So this is a fairly flat section. Here we're starting to go around a curve. So I'm now clicking some more points here. I'll move this out of the way. Microstation's forgiving in that you can click on other things as you're working on drawing something. So going around a curve like this, as you can see, you can see that we're clicking along this road. I'm now going to click on this pan tool, which is this hand. Move the view over. If I right click on the mouse now, it will exit the pan tool. So I'm right clicking. Now I can continue my line that I started. It's kind of nice that it exits the pan tool and then allows me to continue this multi-line segment. So I'll click again, and again, this is fairly flat here. Here. Now we can see the topographic lines are changing. You can see the elevation, it's getting a bit more steep. So I'll try and capture this elevation change as well. At the same time, we're going around a curve. So I'm putting more points that I can stay pretty close to that center line. Okay. Clicking on this contour line here and here. This appears to be a stop line. So this would be a good place to stop the TNM roadway. So this is our first object, this TNM roadway, to show us where this on-ramp is. This is the existing conditions. So let's pan back and add the second lane of the ramp. This will be the center lane of the center lane of the ramp. The center line of the center lane, okay? So we're going to start in the center of the lane next to the line we did previously. I'm going to shift the view of this window over so you can see the tools I'm clicking on here. So this is the multi-line tool in Microstation. We'll click on that tool again and begin the center line of this center lane of the off-ramp. Clicking here, here, here. That was just a little off. We can go back and fix that. Move these out of the way. You may choose to zoom in a bit tighter than I have in this demonstration. I'm zoomed out mostly so that you can more easily see the lay of the land here, and this gives you a general idea of what we're doing, just to put the center line in as our object. So we just did a few clicks around that curve. I'm going to pan the view again. So this is our pan tool. I'm going to right click the mouse to exit the pan tool, and that will bring us back to coding our smart line. So we can complete this coding of this off ramp. So clicking here. We're going around this curve now, clicking here, here. Trying to get match the radius of that curve. And now we will stop the line here by right-clicking the mouse. So here are our two TNM roadway objects, the first of many to come in this model. But we'll stop with those two just for the purposes of the demonstration. As you can see, there's a right turn lane as well for this off-ramp, which we would also add to the model and code that in. So the next piece that I just wanted to briefly show has to do with on-structure points. On-structure points are basically bridges. They are roads that travel over other roads. In this case, we can see for this interchange, there's a bridge that starts from a fairly level elevation. Level as you, these contour lines are spaced fairly far apart, so it's a fairly level section here. And then the elevation is changing. The elevation is increasing as these topo lines are closer together. And then we get to the top of the structure. Then here at the beginning of the bridge, as it crosses the freeway, there's a high density of terrain lines where the elevation goes down substantially, down to the level of the freeway. So what we need to be able to read from this information is that these contour lines are describing the elevation of the road, the freeway, as it travels under the bridge. There are contour files that show the elevation of the bridge as well as a separate layer. We don't have that for this project, so we just need to be able to read these contours to understand what they're showing us. when we code these on-structure points in TNM, they have a special designation, an on-structure toggle, which we'll show you later on in this tutorial. And that allows you to say that there's a roadway crossing another roadway and the elevations are different. If we didn't do that, there would be an error in the model and it wouldn't be able to run. So it's important to understand how that function works. So let's move on to examining other model objects for our existing conditions noise model. Before moving on, I wanted to return to that point where I coded the second line and said there was one point I wanted to fix. It was right around here. So what we can do is we can select these points after we've coded them if we want to make some changes. So when we clicked on this arrow tool here, that allows us to select these roads that we coded earlier. So here is the last road I coded, and you can see these are the points. Each one of these is where I click the mouse to create a point on the line. So I'm going to click on this magnifying glass with the plus sign on it. This will take me to a more zoomed in view. Zoom in on this point of, occasionally little dialog boxes appear, which we don't use and X out of sometimes. So these points are pretty well in the center, but we can modify them a bit just to line them up a bit better. So I'm just clicking on it one time and then clicking on it again. So clicking on it to just nudge it over just a bit. So yeah, these look pretty good. This is not clicked onto this, this is not snapped onto this terrain line. So I guess that's actually a good point to talk about the snap tool. Let's bring that up right here. So this is the snap tool of Microstation. Incidentally, TNM has something similar, which is very useful. This tool allows you to snap, attach a line to another line, basically, or attach one object to another one. So you can capture a coordinate and create a precise location, locate your object precisely, or the vertex of an object. So let me just demonstrate that. Let's suppose we want to have a line that let's just connect this terrain line to this other terrain line. Okay, so I'll click on the snap tool, and here, see this snap shows up. Okay, so we can click once. We'll just click right here. We can imagine this is a line that's describing the terrain. And we'll click here. So now that perfectly captured those two coordinates. This can be useful for coding terrain lines, which we'll show you later. But I thought this would be a good place just to talk briefly about what the snap tool does. So we'll come back to this again later on in the demonstration. So that's the process of drafting a TNM roadway center line in Microstation. As you saw, we were concerned with coding the center lines. The width of the roadway lanes is set in TNM. So we don't describe the width of the roadway. We just want to code where the center line locations are. So that covers the source of our acoustical model. So now let's talk about the receivers.